Press conference today. UC Health Training Center, Greg Penner, George Paton. What does it mean? We're here to answer those questions as soon as I turn this canned rock music down. Welcome into the program. It is Orange and Blue today. It is Cecil Lammey. It is Andrew Mason. It is almost time for Prime, Mace. My Christmas present to myself just came in the mail today, so I'm excited. But
there was a lot of Buffs gear being given out for Christmas this year.
Yes, yes.
I know James mentioned it at our staff meeting that was what he gave his boys, and they were quite happy to receive CU Buffs gear, whether it's Prime gear or just Buffs gear.
Right.
The Buffs are hot, and the Broncos, they're not. But you know who at some point in the last 48 hours was running pretty hot was apparently Greg Penner.
Yes, Greg Penner running very hot, and you could tell today that this means something to him. Mace, I understand that others, and I'll talk about DMAC specifically, are not that impressed. I am 180 degrees the opposite. I am full on 1,000,000% on board with Greg Penner and the words that he said. We're going to jump through it all today on today's program, but let's just get a general feel of your feel after the press conference, because I could have ran through a brick wall. I talked to Steve Atwater as I was leaving, and I was like, listen, this is a tough day. These guys are going to get it right.
Yeah, they're going to get it right. And I think it just shows you now how much this year was very much in the vein of observe and evaluate. We've kind of talked about that, how on the business side, certainly it was going to be an observation evaluation year. They didn't think they were going to have that same scrutiny on the football side of things, but the season went askew in a way to where it did. So they spent the year observing and evaluating, and clearly they not only didn't like what they saw, but they're trying to do something about it. And I'll tell you, another thing I liked was hearing the words, "I'm sorry." Okay. Multiple times. I mean, apologizing to the fan base, thanking them for the continued support despite all of this. These are things that by and large people needed to hear. And what I got from that, I don't ever want to hear about the notion that some people thinking, oh, it's a toy to them, they don't care. No, right. They dadgum well do care about this, and they were mortified and embarrassed by what happened on Sunday. I asked Penner specifically about how it's very rare to do an in-season firing on a first-year coach, and he pointed to the fights, the handshake stuff, and all that. That basically, I got the strong sense that even though Greg Penner knew that he was moving on from Nathaniel Hackett after the season, that he and ownership in general was so upset that they simply didn't want to watch another week of this. Didn't want to spend another Sunday on this. That they were as upset as a lot of the fans were.
Yep, and he multiple times apologized to the fan base. And it was sincere. Yeah. It was honest. I said on coffee break earlier today, you and I have been doing this a long time. I've been around this team for 20 years. Next year it'll be my 20th year. I've never seen, we get to peek through keyholes, and there's a lot of stuff that we know that we can't say, or we wait to say, or whatever, sources per source, whatever. We've never been peeking through this type of keyhole. We really, when you dissect what was said today by Greg Penner specifically, because George Paton, that's another conversation we're going to get to today.
Yeah,
he's lucky to have his job there. Okay, he's lucky to have his job, and you could tell sitting next to Penner that sort of maybe tension. But the keyhole we got to peek through today, and the honesty, the care, the savvy of business and guidance that Greg Penner will have for this team, I thought it was fantastic today.
Yeah, and I think I know I think part of DMAC's concern is, how much do they know about the football business? Look, he's not going to get out there and coach the team. This isn't going to be Jerry Jones trying to be general manager, okay?
Right. He's
interested in finding the right people who do know how to do things well and give them every resource they need to do the job effectively. I mean, there was somebody who tweeted at me making the Jerry Jones comparison. I'm like, no, I'm thinking
Not even
anything
close.
but yeah. Jerry Jones is GM. Jerry Jones thinks he could go coach the team. All right. That's not what's happening here. What Greg Penner wants to do is to get the very best people to do the job in the very best way, which is why, yeah, it might cost a lot of money, but yeah, it's why you can have a conversation about them trying to get Jim Harbaugh, them trying to get Sean Payton. I don't think Sean Payton's likely for other reasons, like for geographic reasons, perhaps, but they're going to try to get the best candidate they can find. And even though Penner didn't rule out a first-time coach, it was pretty clear to me that they're valuing experience in what they're looking for here.
Yes, and so much richness was given to us by Greg Penner today in terms of what he was saying. And it's that business side. Like, he's been around a lot of CEOs. And one thing that we've learned from being around the Walton Penner group is, like, they're going to find the best people. They're going to hire the best people. You have the best resources. You have great fans. You have a great and rich tradition. There's a lot of things that'll line up. So for the people who are like, who would even want this job? There's only 32 of them. And this one is a pretty damn good one when things get on the right track. And I believe that's what Penner is going to do, again, by finding the best people. And this is what we've been told that the Walmart group does in their Walmart business, which obviously has been very successful. Who's the best person? How much do they cost? Go get them.
Yeah, because, and you know what? Even if it costs a lot, you're going to have a benefit from that because you're gaining someone who is at the top of their field. Okay, and that's a key thing. If someone knows more than anybody else about this thing we need done in our business, we don't want them out there. We want them in here. We want them to be a part of this organization. And again, that's what I love hearing. And the other thing also, Pat Bowlen was committed to being number one in everything. And we know that Pat Bowlen had to leverage and had to, to finagle things often to make sure that everybody had what they needed. That's not an issue. This is now with the most cash-rich owners in the NFL. It's all right. We want to go get the best coach. Money's no object. What does the best coach need to do their job effectively? Money's no object. The only thing they're limited on, Cecil, is player spending because of the salary cap. Right. I mean, and that's where sometimes I think to myself, do they ever sit that down at night and think maybe we should have bought the Rockies or tried to convince Dick Monfort to sell? Because as we see with Steve Cohen and the Mets, he doesn't. Oh, I'm going to go in the luxury tax threshold. I don't care. Whatever. Here's the check. Yeah. You can't do that in the NFL. You can't.
Different conversation for a different time. The salary cap's a myth, so they'll finagle around it. Hell, the Broncos had for 32 and 33.
They can finagle around it, but there's only so much finagling you can do before pushing everything off in the future and the bill becomes due.
Yes.
All right. That's
creative bookkeeping.
Yes. It does catch up with you eventually. Ask the New Orleans Saints about this and what kind of purgatory they're in right now.
Right.
So yeah, the salary cap is not a myth, but it can be manipulated for a time.
I think, and I'll quicken this up because we got a zillion things to get to. The salary cap is a myth from their perspective. Oh, well, we just can't afford it. Like, yes, you can.
Oh, no, they can afford anything. Yeah,
you can. The NFL owners all the time with these players, like, oh man, what are we gonna do? Like, we know you have the money. You always have the money.
Well, because you have to put all the guarantees into escrow, right? And sometimes that's a challenge. A big discussion in Cincinnati, for example, is where are Mike Brown and the Bengals owners going to find the money to put in escrow for Joe Burrow, right? You never having that conversation here.
No, not here and not now with Walton Penner Group. George Paton seemed like, I've been in trouble before, Mace. I've been in trouble plenty of times. I know what that situation looks like when you're sitting next to your boss and you're like, man alive, did I mess up? It just seemed like he's lucky to have his job. I may be reading too much into the situation, but I want your opinion because George Paton's here. He's safe. He's going to do his job. Go do your job, George. I get sick of this, hot take radio of like Peyton gone and Wilson gone, and it doesn't make football sense. On this show, I want us to talk about stuff that makes football sense. Just look like today, George Paton knew that he had dummied up, and he knows that he has things to correct. And I like how George Paton said, "Everything is on me. The state of this team, all of it is on me."
Exact quote. I brought in the head coach and I brought in most of the players. Those are my decisions, and there's no one to blame but me. I want to be clear. This isn't just about the coaching. This isn't just about Nathaniel. This is about the entire football operation. This is about the personnel, the players, the staff, and everyone involved with our football team. It has to be better across the board. I have to be better, and I have a lot of work to do. I like the responsibility that he's taking, whether that was compelled to him or not by Greg Penner. Yes, probably there was some pressure on him to put it in those terms. That's okay. But here is the thing on George Paton right now. And it's this. Today, he has less power than he had 48 hours ago.
Yes.
Because he is not deciding the head coach. He'll be involved, but it's going to be a Greg Penner decision with Kerry Walton Penner, Rob Walton, and Condoleezza Rice involved. Condoleezza Rice, who was just involved with the Stanford job,
right,
most recently. And put it this way, George Paton's not outvoting him. If it's 4 against 1 and Paton's the one, that's it. And the coach isn't reporting to him. Coaches are not going up through George Paton anymore. It's going to be at the best case scenario in terms of authority for George Paton is a coach that's on his level. And then if there are ties to be broken, that's where Greg Penner would come in. I worked in a situation like that in Carolina when John Fox and Marty Herney were there. They both reported to Mark Richardson and then later Danny Morrison, who were the team president, who each served the role as team president. And what it was you guys decide among yourselves and figure it out. And if you don't figure it out, we will figure it out for you. Mm-hmm. That's the best case scenario for George Paton right now. But another case could be it's a strong coach. It is like someone like Harbaugh or Sean Payton. They're not going to be on equal terms with George Paton. They're going to be above George Paton in terms of how things are perceived. And so that might lead George Paton to a spot that he doesn't want to be in. I personally believe, Cecil, George Paton's going to be the general manager through this draft process. I don't know if he's the general manager beyond this draft cycle.
Right. And as we mentioned on the show yesterday, changes in the front office happen after the draft.
Right. And smart teams do that. And here's the thing. We remember when the Broncos were a dumb team on this. Josh McDaniels, 2009, February, blows out the people heading the personnel department, Jim Goodman, Jeff Goodman. It's the Josh McDaniels show at that moment. He takes control of football operations with Brian Zanders there, but they junked all the draft preparation they had under the previous administration, and we're starting over basically with 2 months of the draft. And that draft was a disaster.
Yeah.
That second round in particular, Alphonso Smith, Darcel McBath, and Richard Quinn. Debacle.
Alphonso Smith, one of the Jay Cutler picks.
Right.
They traded away a first rounder to get him.
They had all this draft capital and they basically blew it in 2009.
On a 5'7" corner that couldn't play.
So that's the sort of thing that happens when you put yourself in a situation where you get rid of the general manager and personnel people during the draft cycle. And I bring this up because Greg Penner's seeking a lot of advice, a lot of counsel. He is trying to learn about best practices in running a National Football League team. And Joe Ellis is still consulting. John Elway is consulting. Patrick Smythe's still in the building and certainly is giving his feedback. And I'm sure what they would tell Greg Penner is, don't make a move on your personnel person until after a draft cycle.
Yes.
Brian Zanders actually stayed with John Elway for 2 draft cycles before he went on his way and moved on. In Buffalo, a very smart organization. I have nothing but praise for how the football operations of Buffalo run. They hired Sean McDermott from Carolina early in 2017. And then, as I've got this really weird light thing going on here, I don't know why.
It's a ray of light.
There we go. All right, we
There
got to turn here
Yeah.
elsewhere in the room. Okay. So, 2007, Buffalo Bills hire Sean McDermott from the Carolina Panthers. Sean McDermott knows who he wants his GM to be. That's Brandon Beane, also working in Carolina at the time. But it's the middle of a draft cycle. So they hire McDermott. They keep Doug Whaley on the job. After the draft, Doug Whaley's gone. Brandon Beane comes in. That's the smart way to do it. Now, it's possible that you could hire a new coach, and the new coach works well with George Paton, and Paton sticks around, right? But it's also possible that the new coach may say, I want my own person. So is George Paton's place very tenuous beyond today as we get into the future months? Yeah, it is. But there are those who wanted the pound of flesh today. I've had the conversation with people on our air. I'm sure I'm going to have the conversation with DMAC when I get on the air at about 5:10 or so. It's just not the wise way to go about this process here. I mean, for all we can criticize about Peyton, okay, Nick Bonito wasn't a great pick this past year so far. Greg Dulcich was. Found a very good starting cornerback in the 4th round in Damari Mathis. Found some potentially good, at minimum, rotational defensive lineman on day 3 in Matt Henningsen and Iwazurike. And yes, could they have taken Justin Fields in 2021? Yeah, but Pat Surtain was a heck of a pick there in round 1. Quinn Miners, good pick in round 3. Baron Browning, very good pick in round 3. Jonathan Cooper, very good pick in round 7. I'm perfectly fine with George Paton running this draft operation. And it would be unwise to move away from him in the middle of a cycle.
Baron Browning was my number 50 pick, and they got him at 92, right?
Humble brag right there, right? Hey, and it was good work by George Paton, because you took 1 pick and made it into 2 by kind of making deals and moving down. And so you got 2 starters.
Unlike the Alfonso Smith deal, where you had first-rounders from Jay Cutler and gave it away.
Right. 2 good starters. Miners is probably your best offensive lineman. And Baron Browning looks like he's going to be someone who's around here a long time. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There you go. So I completely trust George Paton on this draft cycle. I know that some people are going to hear this and they're going to think I'm crazy, but it would be foolish to get rid of George Paton right now, because you're about to get into the part of the year that he does best in terms of the draft cycle. Now,
it's day 3 ones that we need him to hit, and that's where you can get. I'd like him to go for more, and this is my baseball reference, Mace. And by the way, with me, it's never a humble brag. It's never humble. I will say this: I'd like to see him swing for the fences a little bit more on day 3. You know, because he always goes for the safe guys, and like that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. But when you have a 6'4" corner that runs a 4.2, I mean, maybe.
Okay. I'll give you my swing for the fence here. If Hendon Hooker, coming off his ACL, falls to like pick 45 or 50,
he may do that.
He really may. I'm okay taking those 2 third-round picks and moving up into round 2 to try to get him.
Yep.
And I don't care if he's on NFI for a year while he recovers from the ACL. I'm starting to work on a long-term plan in case Russell Wilson doesn't pan out. And Hendon Hooker is a first-round talent at quarterback. This as a second rounder that would only a second rounder who'd only be in the Mike Evans khaki pants territory because of an injury. So to me, that's a round one guy.
Yep. And
Okay?
any guy that they miss on, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson himself, any guy that's missed on should have been a first rounder. So khaki pants doesn't make sense. It's never made sense. D-Mac's not right on this Peyton thing, and I'll fight him, like physically fight him. But he's right on the.
You want to tell him that? I want to hear you tell him that.
Yeah, I don't know. So what's D gonna do? Come on, like come on. I'm from the country, man. I'm crazy. Yeah.
Oh, I think I'd pay to watch you two fight.
That'd be fun. That would be fun. Boxing match, right? For charity.
Hey, there we go. Let's
yeah. But like he's wrong on that stuff. But like on the first round quarterback, take the first round quarterback.
Yes.
Now Russell Wilson conversation. When they ask, can he be fixed? And there was like a pause. People got a lot out of that pause. Maybe right. I'm not quick to run with that as much as others, but there was a pause.
Okay, well then let's have the first round conversation real quick because it's probably me a late first round pick.
Yeah,
you're picking pick 29, perhaps. Hendon Hooker, right then and there. Would you do it?
Yes,
me too.
Because it's in the Lamar Jackson range. Like
Absolutely.
You don't want to get him in the 20 to 25.
5th-year option too.
Yeah, 5th-year option. Yeah, it just makes sense. Hooker right there, and you
so forget about 50. I do it at 29. I do it at 30.
Mm-hmm.
Right there.
Yep. And I'm anxious because we're gonna pick up more stuff when we're on the road. Shrine Senior. That's when you hear more stuff about draft stock, but where guys are going to be.
And here's the thing, though. I mean, I'm as far as George Paton is going to be handling a lot of the picks, but I will say this: if we're talking about a quarterback, that's going to be a collective decision, and the coach is going to be involved with that. And I think one way or the other, you have to come out of this personnel process in the spring with a viable fallback if Russell Wilson doesn't put it together next year, because it is all about, look, next year is about fixing Russ.
Yes.
But if you can't do that and you have to cut him before the 5th day of the league year in 2024, because you're already stuck with a cap charge from 2023 onward in total of $107 million, right? He's on your team next year, which means $22 million of that's going to be in 23, which would leave $85 million. So that being said, in 24, if he's on the roster on the 5th day of the league year, there's another $37 million that you add beyond that $107 million. And that's why it's all about next year. And that's why you need to cultivate another plan. So yeah, you know what? If you pick Hendon Hooker and Russell Wilson's feelings are hurt and he's upset, well, you know what? Russ just made a decision for you at that point. If he can't, look, there was a guy named Drew Brees back in 04 and 05.
Playing good football,
and they drafted Philip Rivers. All right. And Drew, to his credit, handled it like a pro. He said, I'm going to get better. I'm going to stave off Philip Rivers for as long as possible.
Kept him on the bench till John Lynch hurt his shoulder.
Yes. 21-11 were the Chargers over those 2 years. They won a division title. Okay. Mm-hmm. Drew Brees played well enough to get another shot even after he hurt his shoulder and there were concerns about his career. Did so well that a guy named Sean Payton won him. My point being, that's how you deal with the challenge. If you bring in a Hendon Hooker and Russell Wilson sulks and pouts about it, he gave you your answer, right? Right? He failed the test of being a pro. And then you move on in 24, you cut him, you don't have that $37 million added on to the $107 million you're going to be charged, and you just go forward and you swallow the pill.
Yep.
That's it.
You have to have the plan for the team. In today's sense, just overall, Mace, the sense that I got is this is about the Broncos now. It's not about Russell Wilson. It's not just catering, kowtowing, bowing, genuflecting, whatever you want to say, to Russell Wilson. It's not about the three, it's about the we. And you got that sense from Penner today. And yes, even from Peyton. And yes, there was a pause, but this isn't about Russell Wilson. This is about the long-term health of the Denver Broncos. That can include Russell Wilson, but it also, and smart business people, remember, we're dealing with billionaires, Not just they barely could afford this team and had to, borrow here and borrow there.
They're
and
worth
whatever.
$60-some billion.
Exactly. We're dealing with billionaires. So what are they good at? Money, decisions. Okay. So this decision now is what's best for the team. Hey, Russ, you want on board? We're going to help you. We're going to help you. Oh, you can't do it or you don't want to? Okay, boom. It's still about the Broncos, not about Wilson.
Get on the train.
Yep.
And if you're not on the train, it'll leave without you.
Yep.
It will be content to leave without you. That's what's about. I mean, not that this would happen. I think it's ironic saying this because you're wearing a Prime branded CU sweatshirt. But you know what? I would tell Russell Wilson, shelve the 3 brand, put a Broncos logo on the cap that you're wearing on your head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Make this about the we, not about the me. Not about the personal branding, about being a Denver Bronco.
Mm-hmm.
How will he handle that? Again, if he doesn't handle that well, it's part of getting your answer, right?
Right.
You remember in Miracle that was based on the 1980 Olympic hockey team when Jim Craig won't take the psychology test?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Herb Brooks said, that's all right. You just took the test by not taking it. Now that was a positive answer because as Herb would later say, I want the guy who wouldn't take that test, right? With Russ, with some of these things, okay, why don't you wear a Broncos hat instead of your own brand? Okay. How are you going to handle it if Hendon Hooker walks in the door and could be a quarterback of the future? How will you handle that challenge? And if you get the response that you don't like, that's the end. That's all the answer you need for a big decision, right?
Right.
You can move on. You can move on from there. You can kind of move on guilt-free, but it's part of the test that's going to be thrown at Russell Wilson in 2023.
And they spoke for him today, and they said even Russ would tell you that. Well, guess what Russ is going to answer this week when we get to talk to him? They said you said that you hadn't played up to your set. So Russ, tell us about your standard.
That's going to be, if that's not the first question tomorrow, it's not going to take very long to come
The nice thing is, and I always give us types, I always say we're puppy dogs, but the nice thing is there gets to a certain point where we start asking good questions. And I was proud of the Denver media today.
Sunday, even though I wasn't there at the Hackett press conference for all of it because I wanted to dart to the locker room because I was trying to get Randy Gregory and see if he was available. But Sunday, today, and I expect tomorrow when Russell Wilson talks, I expect a similar tone. Look, this isn't Philly, this isn't New York, but this also ain't Indianapolis and Charlotte either.
Yeah.
We're patient. We're somewhere in between.
But this is the Broncos. We'll give you a ton of passion for this team.
Right. We'll give you time, but we expect accountability. And also, I think another thing, and this was kind of the tone Sunday as well, and even today. I'm not saying that we expect wins every week. Right. We expect a certain level of professionalism. Sunday was not a professional effort. It did not hit any reasonable standard. And then exacerbating it was the fact, and I think this is probably what took it to the next level, Cecil. We were all there on frickin' Christmas. Every single person among the interrogators, among those of us sitting, we were all sitting, the visiting media always sits together, right? And we're all in our section of the press box. I actually felt a little bad for the Broncos employees sitting in the second row above us because in the media corps, it was just I don't think I have seen our group as bitter as on Sunday, as bitter, as smart-assed, as just over everything. As during that game, and the questioning reflected it. I think all of us that are on this beat every day, that moment thinking we're investing at Christmas of our lives watching this crap, I feel like we'd all had enough. And I think what I learned today from Greg Penner is, for maybe the same reasons, he'd had enough too.
That's right.
And I like that. I like the fact that I think Greg Penner feels what we felt and what a lot of Broncos country felt.
Yep.
And, you know, you're mad. That dude was mad too. Maybe even madder than any of us. Because that's those people, you know, those people aren't used to being embarrassed. Think about it this way. It's a family Christmas. You're going to, you know, in this case, you're going to cousin-in-law Stan and Ann's place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're sitting down for the holiday dinner, and maybe you brought your stepkid or somebody, a friend or somebody else. And it's the person that you brought that gets up there and starts doing political nonsense at the dinner table, polarizing it and ruining
and
everybody.
Drinking too much.
Yes, you drank too much. You're making an ass of yourself. Well, Greg Penner on Sunday was the one who brought the person making an ass of himself in the form of the Denver Broncos having a fight on the sideline, having Randy Gregory punch a guy in the handshake line, not having a defense that couldn't even force a freaking punt in a game. And I think he was absolutely mortified. I think he was. I think Kerry Walton Penner was. I think Rob Walton was. I think they as part of the Walton clan were red-faced, livid. I can't. I mean, I think the word is that owner's box was a very uncomfortable place to be on Sunday. I imagine the flight back was very uncomfortable as well. And then they slept on it, and then came in and fired Nathaniel Hackett. I think it was basically a case of, I don't want to see this, and I don't want you this, and I don't want to see you anymore. Nothing personal, but I can't watch another second of this. As Popeye once said, I've had all I can stand. I can't stand no more.
That's what Greg Penner said, eating his can of spinach. And Mace, it's always better to be a smartass than a dumbass. It's Orange and Blue today, everyone. 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time. He is Andrew Mason. I am Cecil Lammey. Appreciate the response. Appreciate the love out there. Share the word. Tell a friend. Orange and Blue today. You got to check it out, right? On all of our denverfan.com socials, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all those good stuff. So we thank you very much. He is Andrew Mason. You follow him on Twitter at Mace Denver. I am at Cecil Lammey. Don't follow me. And as always, be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated, stay tuned, and as always, stay frosty.